Hello and shalom from Yerushalayim, from Jerusalem. I'm very pleased and honored to participate in this series of Divrei Torah, inspired by the teachings of our beloved teacher and master, Rabbi Weiss Halivni, Zichrono Livracha. I have to admit I'm a little bit jealous of my dear friend and colleague, Rabbi Price, who had the privilege many hours of meeting with our dear teacher. And the result is, of course, this fine volume, Divrei Halev, words from the heart, and they really are from the heart. And I could hear Professor Halivni's voice in reading over these wonderful Divrei Torah. This week's parasha is Parashat Mishpatim. And in a very real way, it's another step in the long, arduous process of turning what was, in a sense, a mob of newly freed slaves to forge them into a nation, Am Yisrael, the people of Israel. In the end of the parasha, 2 weeks ago, Parashat Beshalach, after the crossing of the Red Sea and the miracles there, it is said that the people of Israel moved to the place called Marah. And they were complaining and talking about there wasn't enough water to drink, and the place named Marah bitter because of that. And it says there that Sham Sam Lo Choko Mishpat B'Sham Nisahu. At that place, there was given law and statute to the people, and there they were tested. This was, in a sense, a kind of dress rehearsal for giving the Torah on Mount Sinai, which we read about in last week's parasha, Parashat Yitro. And the next step is in this week's parasha, Parashat Mishpatim. And in a sense, it all comes down to one tiny letter, the letter Vav. First word of this week's parasha is Ve'ele HaMishpatim. These are the statutes, and these are the statutes, Asher Tasim Lifam, that you, Moshe, will put before the people of Israel. And Rashi on that place says, any place that says Ele, these, in a sense, is disconnected what came before. Whereas if it says Ve'ele, and these, then it adds to what came before. And then Rashi says, Ma ele mi Sinai, af ele mi Sinai. Just as those, the 10 Commandments, are from Sinai, also these laws of everyday life, of damages, of lawsuits, of disputes between people, these are also part of Sinai. These are also part of the things that make our people Am Yisrael. And as Professor Halivni says in the comments on this week's parasha, it's the same thing, that the Chok Mishpat, those laws and statutes that were given at Marah, a small number. There's a dispute about how many mitzvot were given at Marah, but whatever, it's a small number. Whereas here, we have hundreds of mitzvot given at Sinai, and then placed before the people as Mishpatim, as statutes to live by. And what's important here is that what makes a people is obviously what we would call religious law, but also what we would call civil law. What makes a nation a decent society? And if it says in this week's parasha, Professor Halivni emphasizes the notion of how to treat the stranger, how to treat the orphan and the widow. It's a test of us, because we know that they're going to be around. How do we act? How does this reflect our inner values? The most important thing is 2 other words. We have that ve'ele, and these are, and another two words which appear at the end of the parasha, na'aseh v'nishma. We will do, and we will hear, or we will understand. That the people of Israel, first they say na'aseh, we will do it. And then they say na'aseh v'nishma, we will do it and hear it. It seems to be almost counterintuitive. At first you want to hear and understand, and then you'll do. But Rav Halivni tells us no. You have to be doing things to get into it. You don't need intellectual convincing. You need the feeling of doing the mitzvot. And that is something that comes only from doing. After that, you can understand, you can learn, you can go into it. But the basic test is first of doing. And Professor Halivni makes the very important distinction between what he calls Torat Chaim and Torat Emet. The Torah of life and the Torah of truth. And in a very, very real sense, both of these are lifetime activities. It's not something that was given at Mount Sinai and that was it. No. That we will do and we will understand, we will delve into, we will learn. These are both lifetime activities. They may be in conflict sometimes. As again, Rav Halivni says in his own special way, that this is something we struggle with our entire lives, to understand the words of Torah, but understanding the words of Torah while living the words of Torah. It may be sometimes our intellectual understanding may lead us to something which is not exactly according to the halacha. And we have examples of this from so-called pashtanim, the people who gave the kind of plain sense meaning of scripture, who sometimes said, my intellectual understanding is that this is not the way the halacha is practiced, but nevertheless, Torat Chaim. We live by the Torah of Chaim. Torat Chaim gives the meaning to our lives. Torat Emet is the intellectual structure to those lives. But both of these are lifetime occupations, lifetime challenges for all of us as Jews. Looking for new insights every time we go back to the words of Torah, but out of sense of living those words of Torah. There is a saying in the Midrash and the Talmud Yerushalmi that everything that some veteran student is going to teach, say in front of his teacher, was already said to Moses at Sinai. And what this means is basically that it's all there potentially to get to those understandings. It goes back to that Sinai experience. But every day, when we study, when we live according to Torah, that Mount Sinai experience is renewed, expanded, and deepened. I wish you all Shabbat Shalom from Yerushalayim.